And welcome to the Prescribing Prosperity Podcast with your hosts, John and Alex Soutsos. Gentlemen, as always, a pleasure. How are you?
I'm well, Bill. Good to see you again.
Great to see you, Alex.
Nice to see you again, Bill. It's been a long time.
It has been. I feel like, gosh, it's been forever, as a matter of fact.
You're like our dog.
I know. It's like,
where you guys been?
Where you going? Where'd you go?
You disappeared. You went behind that thing, and then
I'm so glad you're back. I'm so glad you're back. Oh God, guys, don't go away again. So, Alex, this may be inappropriate. I don't know. What are we talking about today? Is there anything? Is this amusing on the table?
Sure. We could talk. we could talk about dogs and their separation anxiety, but I don't think that's going to be the topic for today.
Okay.
I think today we're going to be discussing. No, sorry, Megan. We're going to be talking about building brands and building brand awareness with our guest today, Megan Matthews. So, Bill, I'll let you continue with the rest of your introduction, and then we'll turn it over to Megan to just get a brief introduction into her background.
Well, you really did basically what I was going to do. Is I was going to say, I know your guest is Megan Matthews. Mm-hmm. And I know that she is going to talk about branding, and I think it's a really important topic, and it's certainly one of those topics that people often come up with. And a phrase I hear increasingly is, "What is your brand?" Mm-hmm. That doesn't sound like my brand, and what I think it means, and I'm going to be interested to hear if Megan agrees with me. Is it authentic? Uh-huh. Is it real? and therefore, are you and your brand trustworthy? And with that, Alex, take us away and introduce us at more length to Megan.
Sounds good. Well, Megan, officially, thank you for coming on here today and joining us. How you doing?
I'm great, and thanks for having me, guys. This is a pleasure as a fellow company of a father-child. This feels relatable, so we'll get into that, I'm sure. But yeah,
I want to hear more about that.
Yeah,
absolutely. So actually, that's a great point to start. Why don't you tell us a little bit what led you into the world of marketing and PR? I know you're working with your dad's company now, but prior to that, you also worked outside of his organization. So why don't you give us a little bit of an overview about your career journey, Megan?
Yeah, thanks. So I have been in the branding and PR world for over 20 years now. Growing up, my dad was in the advertising industry, and he always said to me that PR will be the next big thing. So it'll no longer be so much about big paid ads. They'll still have a role, but it'll be about PR, which is really third-party endorsement of your product, service, you as a person, whatever it may be. And I always had a love of magazines, of media, the news. And so I went to school for that at University of Ottawa. And during school, started working in PR internships, and then immediately out of school went into a PR agency. And I've been in PR agencies in Toronto, New York, and London, UK, up until I took over my dad's business 6 years ago. So that's the elevator pitch of the career.
All right. So we're one question, and I'm already going to take a detour because you said something very interesting to me. What led your dad to believe that, as somebody working in the advertising industry at that time, what led him to believe that PR was going to be the next wave, as opposed to what had historically been the primary driver of building brands and growing businesses in the advertising space?
Yeah, and it's such a good question. He started to see that brands had more of an opportunity than just being sort of a one-way communication vehicle. That is, you see a billboard, you see a commercial, and back when he started, it was all about the 30-second commercial, and you could basically capture almost the entire country with one commercial because everyone was watching the same thing back then before streaming. So it was really a powerful medium, but he started to see that people wanted to have endorsement of that brand from someone else. They wanted to know from a third party that they could trust that brand, have more of a conversation about what that brand stood for, and really started to see that brands needed to be beyond one dimensional. So really having a point of view and endorsement of that through PR, which is really getting a journalist or today someone on social media, some sort of endorsement unrelated to the brand or the company, really goes so far. And he really believed and started to see that consumers were wanting that. So he felt like it was the next big thing. He was also inspired by a father-daughter duo called Al and Laura Rees. And they were sort of early brand voices talking about the power of branding. And she had a PR background and he had an advertising background. And so he always kind of said, I feel like we can be the next Al and Laura Rees. They're American. They, Laura still keeps going with the business. Al, I believe, is no longer with us. But a story that inspired him. And he felt like, okay, that's the next thing.
Nice. Well, I always compare my dad to the Queen of England. She's just going to sit on the throne forever until he kicks the bucket, and then I'll be a geriatric by the time I take over. But I like yours better.
Like Prince, now King Charles.
Yes,
he got there eventually, Alexander.
Well, yeah, I know, but like I said, he's old.
The Queen had a great brand, still does.
Yeah,
so
I think
I think that's a good follow.
I'm not a fan of the institution of the monarchy, but I will give her credit. She minded her business very well, and she conducted herself exquisitely.
Mm-hmm.
I would agree.
So when do you think that transition started to occur in your dad's career? I know we're spending a little bit of time in his career before we get to yours.
Yeah.
But was that more, are we talking about the mid 1970s? Or are we transitioning more into the 80s when you're getting like we're getting beyond just like the brand, like I'm Michael Jordan with Nike, for example, or, somebody who is dedicated, associated with one brand. And now we're starting to get external third parties as endorsements. When does that transition start to occur?
Yeah, he really started to say it to me probably the late 90s. So started to say to me, I really think this is the future. It's not about the kind of Mad Men era of like all about the 30-second commercial or the brand putting some big glamorous thing out there. Yes, that still happens, but there has to be more to it. And there has to be more authenticity that comes with that brand by having others speak up for the brand or the company. So he really started to say it to me in the late 90s when I was going to university. Okay. And that was around the time. And then he had worked with so many large brands throughout his career. Xerox was a big one. He helped launch the photocopier back in his career in Canada. He worked with Honda. He worked with Energizer, Adidas, which I believe we're going to talk a little bit about. But in 2001, he sold his ad agency and started Instinct. Instinct based on the idea that brand founders lead by instinct. And we need to be capturing that instinct in order to lead with authenticity and live the brand with consistency as it grows. And the reason he felt this was so important is that in working with all of these large brands, they didn't always know what they stood for. When someone would say, well, what's your brand all about? They would say, oh, well, we have this logo, this tagline. Here, they may have some company values, but beyond that, the why and the purpose behind the brand and how they live that through everything that they do just wasn't articulated clearly. And he was surprised to see that even with some huge brands he was working with. And so he started Instinct and he started calling himself a brand coach to basically coach founders on how to ensure that the instinct they led with was embedded in everything that they did and the true purpose of the organization came through in all facets of the business.
Nice. And so, actually, we'll start here first. Well, what was the point that you said, I want to go and I want to work with him. I want to join Instinct and I want to be a part of this going into, for the rest of my career. What was the primary motivation behind that move?
Yeah, it's a good question. My whole family, my parents, my grandparents, I was the first one to go to university and the first one to work for someone else. Everybody, including my husband now, who you know, Alex, everybody are entrepreneurs, including my father-in-law. So we were naturally made for each other because our families are just entrepreneurial in nature. So it was really
Andy's a serial entrepreneur. Like, he
oh
loves
my gosh,
everything.
yes. And it was really a question. So I worked in a lot of large agencies, and it was really a question of, okay, when are you going to step out and do your own thing? It's not if, it was kind of when. Right. And so finally, do you know what did it? And this is probably a conversation a lot of women can relate to, is when we had our first child. I felt like the 12-hour days of working in PR agencies, which is really typical. It started to shift now, but the work-life balance was pretty much non-existent. Mm-hmm. I kind of said, okay, I've got to do something else. And it was really the push I needed to say, let's get out from under working for someone else and do my own thing. And that's when my dad said, well, he had kind of hung up his skates by that point, if you will. He was ready to retire. And he said, why don't you take the Instinct model? It is all about communication, storytelling, and bring my PR background into what we know is a proven model that works with Instinct and carry it forward. And we were living in the UK at the time. And I did do that. So I stepped into the brand, and my goal has been to live it with ruthless consistency since my dad started it. And that was the push I needed, was having kids so that I could literally make my own hours and be my own boss. And I don't think I would go back now.
Megan, what has been the impact of your relocating to different parts of the world on your business? Has it been seamless, or tell us a little bit about that?
Do you know what? I think this is where COVID was a big benefit, John, if we can find the positives in the years of COVID.
One of the very few is that people started to realize you can do great work from other geographic locations. And you don't necessarily have to be in a certain market if you understand that market. And so we moved from the UK back to my native Canada during COVID. And all of my UK clients, I was honest with them, they stuck with me. They said, great, don't care where you are, as long as you can get the work done. So, and then my husband's business is in the UK as well, primarily. But then we both started to build up our networks again here. And I would say the impact has actually it's been really positive, because having a global understanding of how communications works really without geographic borders is a benefit to what I do. I understand the US market, UK market, Canadian market, and brands like that, because now with social media, your brand doesn't necessarily stay in Canada. So they like that global understanding and awareness. So for us, it's been a total benefit. Do you have to adapt to each of these markets? Yes. Your branding approach?
You typically, I would say the core of your branding. So one of the things I will talk about is the importance of having a brand foundation. And that is literally your brand articulated on a page. And it becomes the organizing principle for your company and the filter for everything that you do. And you want that to remain consistent. But the messaging and how you speak to your audience and the channels with which you communicate do have to change depending on the market.
How is the UK unique from Canada and the US?
That's a really good question. It probably depends on the industry specifically. I would say that I'm currently working with a nonprofit that started in the UK. And one of the things we notice is that people there aren't necessarily as interested in some of the same conversations that we might be here.
Canadians and Americans, I would put us in the same pot in this sense, are much more forthcoming in terms of talking about mental health, in terms of talking about conversations that were once things you maybe didn't talk about on social media, or as a company you maybe didn't have a stance on. And I would say that the UK and British people, this is really a broad statement, but in general aren't as open about some of these topics as North Americans are.
Well, still reserved.
Yeah, very much so. There's definitely a bit more of an old-fashioned kind of vibe in terms of some topics. Yeah.
Okay. And so what were some of the challenges that you faced when you took over your father's business? Was it a fairly seamless transition for you, or did you find that there were bumps in the road that made you adapt your approach in order to suit his business model as opposed to the business models that you had worked on in the other organizations?
Yes. So I think the number one challenge, because my dad essentially, he didn't have any active clients anymore. He was doing some consulting, but it really was me picking up the model that he used. He also wrote a book called Brand, It Ain't the Logo, and it was a Globe and Mail bestseller for a number of years. You can still buy it on Amazon, and I will say
Awesome.
that it's timeless. And one of the things we always talk about is consistency being one of the number one rules to building a brand. And it's consistent in its advice, and I'll talk more about that. But I think one of the hardest things for me was getting over the idea that anyone might think there was nepotism involved. Mm-hmm. I was really conscious of that and still sometimes am. So people say to me, well, one of the most powerful elements of your story, an instinct story, is the fact I took it over from my dad and following in his footsteps. But I also think it's one of the biggest risks if people think, ooh, is she as good as her dad was? And I'm conscious of that. And I don't know, Alex, if you ever have those feelings or if it's a female
every
thing.
Day. No, every day, Megan. It's not I don't think that's just a female thing. I think that's especially for what we do, where there's a lot of, active marketing or cold prospecting that occurs. It is something that I am always conscious of, is how am I being perceived by the people that I'm interacting with? I don't walk into the room with 40 years of credentials behind me. I walk into the room with my own credentials, but not the same credentials that my dad has, and that can be a challenge trying to build that credibility and that trust with somebody in a different way than my dad is able to, because he can lean on 40 years of experience.
Yeah, you also don't have 60 years of aches and pains every morning when you wake up.
No, I
don't. No, we have to look forward to.
I think when you're succeeding a previous generation, inevitably you're going to have those doubts. You're going to have those question marks. But I think if you're competent, people will see that immediately. And I clearly, in your case, Megan, people have seen that in you, and I think people see it in Alexander. When I thought of succession planning for my business, initially I thought our company would probably take over, but having Alexander involved made things a lot smoother for me, because I have immense confidence in his abilities, and I could think of no better person who would take over the mantle and continue to provide the quality that I strive for on a daily basis. Because what's important to me, and I'm sure equally important to you, Megan, is you want to deliver the best. You don't want to let anyone down, and you want to be innovative and think differently. And I think in our case, I think Alexander will carry those things into the future, and as you are doing with your dad.
Thanks, John. Yeah, and it makes me think about the fact that brands make people feel things, and I think your brand is all about what people think of it and how it makes them feel. And I think about the fact that family business does have a lot of feelings associated with it. You think of, the mom and pop hardware store. People have a nice feeling about that. And I think there is some of that, not saying we're mom and pop shops, but that people translate that feeling of family, of being proud, of putting your all into it, because it is about family. And I think that part of the brand is important.
I think what family businesses bring to the forefront is that people can see that you care.
Yes.
When you're dealing with a large institution like in Canada, the banks, insurance companies, the people who are representing the institution, yeah, they care to a degree, but at the end of the day, they're employees. Whereas when you own the business, the buck stops here.
Yes.
Right? You are ultimately responsible. And so you're going to do everything in your power to make sure you deliver not just what they're looking for, but something better than what they're looking for.
Yes, completely. I couldn't agree more. And so I would say that feeling though of, can I live up to the reputation my dad has built, especially in Canada? It did help in launching in the UK. If originally it was based on my reputation and my network in the UK, because that is a market my dad hadn't worked in. So that did help. But having returned to Canada and reconnecting with some of his contacts, past clients, I did feel I really had to make sure I led with the experiences I've had and the previous roles I've held to make sure that they saw that this was a legit, role for me.
Yes,
so, yeah.
Absolutely. So which industries did you enjoy working with the most? I know that your mother was involved with fashion. Was that one of the ones that you enjoyed working with the most, or are you kind of agnostic? You don't really care which industries you're working with in terms of their PR and branding?
I love this question because ask 20-year-old me who moved to New York at 29 because I wanted to work in fashion PR, I would have said fashion all the way. It was great for 5 years. And then I realized that the fashion industry, that could be a whole episode in itself, but has many challenges. And I realized that being a generalist and brand agnostic is actually one of the most valuable things I can be for clients. Because, for example, I have an experience working in the beauty industry, and the beauty industry is often very innovative in terms of the way it markets, the way brands are positioned, and you can take those learnings and apply to other industries. And I have worked in everything from funeral planning clients to tech for real estate companies to pharmaceuticals. So I really consider myself a generalist. And I'll say that some of the brands that might feel a little more boring now, I actually love the most, because you can make the biggest change sometimes in a short time.
Give us an example
of a boring. That's so awful. I'm about to call a client boring. Okay, maybe. Okay, I'm going to use one.
They know they're boring. Don't worry.
What? What's that?
They know they're boring, so you don't have to worry about offending them.
Well, you know what? And boring is really, in the eye of the beholder. Like, lots of people love industries that others may say they don't love. And so, for example, I worked with a wealth management company.
We know
not
we're
you guys. They're based.
It's okay, Megan. We know we're boring.
I just called you guys boring, but I'm not a numbers person.
I have meetings with clients every day, and their eyes glaze over after about 3 minutes. But I drone on and on intentionally because I got to demonstrate I actually know something.
But do you know what? In having the discussion, so part of what I do is called a think audit. Because we say your brand is what people think of you, the first step I often do with clients is to find out what do their most important stakeholders, clients and staff, think of the brand. So in speaking to this wealth management company's clients, they were some of the most interesting conversations I had, because they're talking about their life's savings and how they are trusting this brand with setting up their family, their grandchildren for the future. And I realized this is the most powerful discussion I could be having with this individual, because this brand is so important in their life, as you would be in the lives of so many of your clients. And
they just want to get results. They don't want to actually talk to me.
Yeah.
No, but
that is what a lot of them said. They're like,
I know we're boring.
They said the best compliment they could give this company was, I can sleep at night because I'm working with them. And that's that makes me feel great. And I know my grandkids are in great hands. And so we learned about the importance of this trust and the value that families put on the organization. And that helped to really reignite the passion amongst team members and to really lean into a positioning that was around that trust and being such an important part of your family. And yet the thing that you kind of want to forget about until you need it. And so it was really, so as I say, sometimes the most boring industries, again, my description, not yours, can be the most interesting because of the valuable, authentic, and really amazing insights that you get from people about the importance of that brand in their life. And as I say, the organization was able to make some tweaks to their customer service approach, their platform, the digital platform that their clients logged into. They were able to make changes based on that feedback. And I also love working with companies that aren't huge behemoths. I've worked with the Unilevers of the world, and change takes a long time. Working with smaller companies, you can see change happen in 4 weeks that are improving the brand perception. And that is so rewarding.
Right. So when many people hear the term branding, they think of advertising. They're going to think of marketing. You know, I just recently rewatched Mad Men, so obviously that's where my mind goes. But I actually did too. It was totally serendipitous that we ended up connecting for the podcast because I did just finish watching it a couple weeks ago. But anyway, I digress. I love that show. It's one of my all-time favorites.
So
but
good.
How do these two areas differ? Like how are they the same, but how are they different?
Yeah, it's an important question because I do think people are starting to understand the difference, but I think it's confusing. So advertising, how I would describe it, is very much the Mad Men era. It was, okay, great. Let's do an amazing commercial for the one major TV network that everyone watches. And today that still happens. There's tons of ad agencies out there who are creating amazing short films, if you will, or 30-second spots that they buy a place. And now it may be they're buying a spot on YouTube instead of, the one TV channel everyone's watching. They're buying space on YouTube. And that is advertising. It's like one-way communication. I'm putting my ad out there.
Right.
Marketing, I see as being actually different as well, in that marketing, I feel like, is so many different facets. I think social media falls into marketing now. I think that, whether you're doing pop-up events, that's marketing. So marketing is sort of anything where you're engaging with your customer. And then branding is the feeling people have about your brand. So it's much harder to articulate because it's almost this thing, and that's why we're called instinct, because it's often based on instinct, and it's literally based on instinct, but you then need to harness it and make sure that how people are engaging with your brand is making them feel the way you want them to feel about your brand. So again, for your business, it might be about trustworthiness.
Mm-hmm. So Megan, given the world we live in today, and YouTube and all these social media platforms, there's been a few branding faux pas that have taken place the last couple of years without naming names. By the same token, there's probably been a couple of
Budweiser.
And there's probably a few champions that have really gotten it right. So can you?
Yeah.
Let's use these public examples because these are not private organizations. How did Bud Light and Cracker Barrel foul up recently, and then go and identify one that succeeded with a nice move?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So those are great examples. So, every smart marketer wants to put ideas out there that makes them feel uncomfortable, because if you're the same as every other brand out there, you're not going to stand out, especially these huge consumer brands. They have to do things that make people go, ooh, wow, that's really interesting and quite daring. But the line is very fine in terms of, have we done it right? and people think we're really cool and want to continue to engage with us and we align with how they feel about our brand? Or have we done something that's gone too far? And in the case of Bud Light, I think it was, marketers wanting to, and I forget the whole scenario with Bud Light, to be totally honest. It was a number of years ago now, but I know it was related to the LGBTQ community, and the LGBTQ community felt very offended by what Bud Light had done, and they lost a lot of customers based on that, and stock price fell, and it was a PR nightmare. Mm-hmm. And I think, they were trying to do something that spoke to that community, but they really didn't do it the right way.
Yeah.
Well, they also disenfranchised their core customer base.
Exactly, John. And interestingly, so this is one you guys may not be as aware of, but I was just reading about it this week. So there's a brand called Elf Cosmetics. It's available in Target, Walmart, everywhere. It's for kind of maybe younger women, and it's like a $9 price point. They just did a spot that went out on social media, on YouTube, etc., with a comedian called Matt Rife. And do you know him, Alex?
I'm not familiar with him.
I'm familiar with the company, though.
You at the company. He's very controversial, and he's an attractive guy. So he originally made his career on being kind of this attractive comedian. He didn't want to have a primarily female audience. So he started directing his jokes to be a bit more male-led. And he made some jokes that people were very upset about domestic violence, about women's bodies, about things that women got very upset about. Elf Cosmetics, with a primarily female audience, decided to use him in one of their recent ads. And they felt like this was a line where they were being super edgy by using him, because women did think he's attractive, but they completely misread their audience, because now women are kind of disliking him so much because of how far he's gone to try to appeal to a male audience. Right. So it's had a lot of controversy in kind of the press, the marketing press, and on social media. The comments on this post when they first released the film are women being like, "Are you kidding me? Like, this has to be a joke. Like, where's the hidden camera here?" So they read the room wrong, pushed the envelope a little too far. Yeah. And there is that fine balance. I mean, the Cracker Barrel example, that one is interesting to me, but it shows to you. So while we say your brand is not your logo is certainly a part of how people feel about the brand and the visual representation of that brand. And for brands that have been around a long time, like Cracker Barrel, and people would have, it's mainly Americans, so we don't have the same experience with it as Americans would. But I imagine American families have feelings of nostalgia towards that brand. They went with their family when they were a kid. And so when they saw the logo change, people don't like change in general. They were like, "Oh my God, I don't like it, put it back." And especially in an uncertain economy, a country that's feeling unsettled, "I don't like change, put it back." Yeah. And the company panicked because their stock price was falling, and they immediately reverted back. Now, Gap beat them out in terms of reverting back to their old brand logo. Their Gap a few years ago tried to change their logo, and it was a 6-day window they lasted. Cracker Barrel, I think, was 7 days. So they panicked and changed it back.
Yeah. Maybe we should talk about classic Coke now.
Yeah, that too, right? People don't like change with brands that they feel so strongly about. And I would question, why did they change the visual representation of their brand? And we always say that new friends are a brand's worst enemy. So what does that mean? It means when a new marketing director, a new CEO, a new agency comes on board, they want to make their mark and they want to change things. And it's not always for the right reasons. And did they actually do the research that suggested people wanted a change, or did they do this because they just all kind of got bored? We also say that the moment you are getting bored with your messaging as a company, or you're getting bored with your logo, is actually the moment when clients are just starting to get super used to it, starting to feel its consistency and starting to really get comfortable with it. So consistency is key. And I think, maybe these logos never had to change.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting lesson.
I think of Bud Light for that example and that's exactly what it was. It was a new CEO coming in and saying, I'm going to put my stamp on it. I don't want us to be, the frat boys and NASCAR beer anymore. I want us to be the beer for everyone. And instead of, doing something that said, okay, how can we bring in a different audience? They alienated their core business, their core client base, at the expense of trying to find somebody new and try and find that new audience. And I think the best way that you can do good branding and good brand work is to try and find a way to knit both those together. You don't want to completely alienate your history. You want to bring your history with you while also trying to see who else can we reach, what other demographics are out there that would also enjoy our products. And you have to be a little bit more creative than, I don't like this, or I want it to just be about me and I'm going to put my stamp on it, and therefore I'm going to completely abandon everything that we've established to this point and go in a completely new direction. I think that's a very challenging and risky, and in many cases misguided approach to branding.
Yes, Alex. And a brand that I think has recently done this merging of kind of past customers with new customers really well is Gap. So Gap was going downhill for a number of years. People were feeling like it was no longer relevant, felt outdated, all of that. They have a number of new executives, and this is a case where new friends has been a good thing, but a number of new executives who have brought some new energy in and looked at, okay, the Gap of the past, and this was when I was probably like high school, university, had super cool ads where it was like Sarah Jessica Parker. I think they had Lenny Kravitz, and they were like all dance based and like just beautiful
Upbeat.
Pieces of creative. Yes.
Yeah.
Celebratory, focused on denim, because denim is like Gap's bread and butter that they do really well. They lost that over the years, and they were no longer tapped into that kind of cultural zeitgeist of like, who are the cool people that people want to see on screen and dress like. They've brought back that same kind of dance denim vibe, but with artists whose names I don't even know because I am not the target now. Yes. Well, I am still the target. I forget the names of the artists in these ads, but they are like, the 20-year-olds are loving these artists now, but they're doing the dance numbers with the denim that I'm going, that's so cool. Even though I don't know who that is, it reminds me of the days of
exactly. They're tying in both because they're giving the current generation something that they can attach themselves to, as well as for you, they're tugging on your heartstrings and your nostalgia by saying, remember when we used to be like this, and they'll try and pull you in that way. And so there's a great way to get both those audiences at the same time.
Exactly. And I think it's a case study for doing it right. Totally.
Yeah. Come on, Megan. You know who Ariana Grande is.
I think it's someone more, I think it's Tyler.
Even younger than that?
Yeah.
She's
feel
not current
like
anymore.
This is horrible. My younger family members will be horrified that I don't know. But
my wife is a teacher, and she tells me all the time what the kids are talking about in terms of, because she teaches grade 7 math. And so I get to hear some of the music and artists that they're talking about. Who the hell is that? I've never.
I know.
I used to when I was younger. I used to go on iTunes. There's another dated reference. I used to go on iTunes, and I used to actually go to see who was at the top of the charts, and then find that artist, and then go and listen to some of their music to see if they had anything that I liked, just for idea generation and looking for new music. And I don't have time for that anymore. And so the new artists that come out, I have no idea who they are.
I know. You watch the Grammy Awards now, or Academy, and it's like, wow, who are these people?
Yes.
Yeah. I stopped paying attention after Dean Martin.
That goes back a little bit further than Ariana Grande.
Yeah, a little further, but I like it.
Okay, so let's go. Let's pull ourselves back a little bit and talk about how do most people approach the concept of branding itself, and how should they approach it? We'll start with how do they currently approach it, and how should they approach it?
I think most, and we're talking, well, this really applies to all companies. I think most look at it as, okay, our brand is articulated in the form of some values. We maybe got a mission statement or a vision statement. And I can talk about the difference of those two because they're easy to get mixed up. And I think there's lots of different definitions out there. But and then we've got sort of our brand book that's maybe got our colors, our logo, our tagline, how we use images, things like that. And people kind of say, okay, this is our brand. What I think people don't do is, and what they should be doing is making sure they're super tapped into their what their customers think. So do they really understand how their customers perceive their brand? And is that rooted in how they articulate it? So they're always kind of reviewing, how do we define our brand? How do we explain it? And is it rooted in true stakeholder insights? Also, I think that branding is kind of seen as, okay, let's get someone to help us with our brand and we'll have it sorted in like a couple months and great, we're done. Mm-hmm. One of the most important rules of branding is time. And it's really not an event, it's a process and it takes time and it's built on, again, how people feel. So it's about everything that you do. And one of our vision for, so we say vision is, where are you going and how will you know you're there? And that's your kind of big, hairy, audacious goal as a brand. Your mission is, what do you do every day to get there? So our mission as Instinct is to help company leaders take the concept of brand out of the marketing department and into the hands of the whole organization. So brand is really about, how do you make sure that your customer, talking about a bigger company here, your customer services department lives the brand. Those people, if there's a storefront, they're living the brand. Everybody's living the brand with consistency. And so I think a lot of people think branding is kind of an event. We can solve it quickly. We can get our brand out there through a great commercial or some social media content, but it really is a process, something that needs to be reviewed often. And evolved often to make sure that it's relevant with what your customers think at that current time. Right. So, yeah.
So I got one quick question here, because I see Bill's ready to jump in for a quick break here. But one question that I've always wanted to ask somebody in the inside, and I'm glad that you're here so I can ask you: do some brands or some companies intentionally put out bad advertising as a conversation piece? Like, is that an intentional decision, or is there just some numpty who's sitting there in an office who says this was a great idea, and then it comes out and it just absolutely flops? Like, I don't know about you, Megan. I don't know if you've seen the DoorDash commercials where, they're, sick in bed and they have the really annoying music, and, they're pretending that they're zombies walking over and pushing each other to get to the front door. It's really weird, and I hate it, and it drives me up the wall. I want to know why.
No, I think unless it's intentionally trying to be ironic or something, I feel like I haven't seen that one, thankfully, perhaps. I feel like, no, they're not putting it out because they think it's bad on purpose and they believe any PR is good PR. No, I think they genuinely believe it's really great. And I think it's a case of marketing teams trying to do what I said, which is push that envelope, but they've gotten it wrong. And I'll tell you one thing, having worked in what's called a lot of interagency teams, so where there's a PR team at the table, an advertising team at the table, a social media team at the table, the advertising agencies have this incredible ability to put their creative directors forward and sell any idea. I think creative directors should hold courses on how to sell ideas, because they can sell any idea. And I guarantee this was a case of a creative director being so convincing that this was the idea that the team bought it. And the creative director said, we're going to win tons of industry awards. This is going to do it. And they took the leap. And I think it's someone who was really good at convincing the team.
So Don Draper was in that room and sold them on.
Exactly. He is an example. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right. I'm going to call John Hamm and I'm going to yell at him. And with that, Bill, you can take back over.
No, I mean, I do. By the way, we love Madman in this house. It was just like this is a brilliant series. And in full disclosure, my wife worked for a number of years at one of the largest PR companies in the world. So,
well, I used to work at Edelman, so you don't have to say if that's the one, but Maybe
no, it wasn't, but it was one across town. Started with a K, as a matter of fact.
Okay. Yeah.
So we need to take a really quick break here, but we're going to come back to talk more about the branding process. And I really like and want to explore more of this idea of branding is feeling and how people feel about things, because I think that that's one thing people don't understand clearly enough. And so we look forward to continuing this conversation. Meantime, we're going to take a quick break. Don't go away. Do something first. Hit the follow button. So if you're not a subscriber, you have now become one by hitting that button, and you will be notified when part 2 of this conversation is released. It's an easy way to remind yourself to stay tuned for part 2, as a matter of fact. So until next time, when John and Alex return with Megan, I'm Bill Tucker, thanking you for taking the time to listen to this episode. It's only one half of an episode. And I encourage you to do something which was just talked about a little bit earlier in this podcast. If you like it, tell people about it. Because you telling somebody about this podcast and that you liked it is the most powerful brand thing you can do. Because we get all these AI robots and bots telling us, we think you would really like it. No, nothing replaces the human voice saying, I really like this podcast and you should give it a listen. So we thank you for doing that. Until next time, I'm Bill Tucker on behalf of John and Alex Soutsos and everybody at MedWealth Financial. Thank you for taking the time to listen, and we'll see you in part 2.
Thank you for listening to Prescribing Prosperity. Visit our website at med-wealth.ca. That's med-wealth.ca for more information or to connect with us for a consultation. Don't forget to click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the hosts and their guests and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of IPC Securities Corporation. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investment advice. Always seek the advice of a qualified and licensed financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment or retirement planning. MedWealth Financial Services can provide a private consultation to help you determine the suitability of any guidance discussed on the show.